Dr. Lisa Morgan wiped the sweat from her face as she looked at the strange crystal structure they had found, buried in the red dirt of Kepler 442b. The planet was hot and dry, nothing like Earth, but it held secrets that made the long journey worth it. She had been digging here for 3 weeks with her team, looking for signs of alien life. "Jake, bring the scanner over here," Lisa called to her engineer. Jake Sullivan was a big man with rough hands who could fix anything that broke on their ship. He carried the heavy equipment like it weighed nothing at all. "What do you think it is, Doc?" Jake asked as he set up the scanner near the crystal. The thing was huge, maybe 20 feet tall and covered in symbols that looked like they were carved by intelligent beings. Amy Carter, their communications expert, was already connecting cables to her computer. She was young and smart, always, eager to try new things. "The energy readings are off the charts," she said, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. "This thing is still active after who knows how many years." Ben Torres stood guard nearby, his hand resting on his weapon. As their security officer, he never relaxed, always watching for danger. "I don't like this," he said. Dead planets don't usually have active alien technology just lying around. Lisa understood Ben's worry, but she was too excited to stop now. This was what she had dreamed of her whole life. Real proof that humans were not alone in the universe. "Amy, can you connect to it safely?" Amy nodded and plugged her equipment into a small port she found on the crystal's base. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "I'm getting data," Amy said, her eyes wide with surprise. "Lots of data. More than our computers can handle all at once." The crystals. Light grew brighter, and strange symbols began appearing in the air above it, floating like holograms. Jake stepped back, grabbing his tools. Maybe we should slow down a bit. But Amy was already deep into the alien system. "It's some kind of database," she said. "A huge one. It has information about hundreds of different worlds and species." Lisa felt her heart racing. This was bigger than anything they had hoped to find. "Can you access the files about Earth? About humans?" Amy's fingers flew over her keyboard, searching through the alien data. Minutes passed in silence, except for the humming of the crystal and the sound of Amy typing. Then she stopped, her face going pale. "Doc, you need to see this," Amy said, her voice shaking slightly. Lisa rushed over to look. At Amy's screen, there in clear text that had been translated by the alien system, was a file labeled Species 7749H, Homo sapiens, Earth origin. "Open it," Lisa said. The file contained detailed information about humanity that made Lisa's blood run cold. There were pictures of human cities, descriptions of human behavior, and reports about human military actions. But what scared her most was the classification at the top of the file. Restricted access. Do not engage in hostile actions. "What does that mean?" Jake asked, reading over her shoulder. Amy scrolled through more files. "There's more. Look at this." She pointed to a section labeled Historical Interaction Protocols. The text was clear and frightening. "All civilizations are advised to avoid direct conflict with species. 7749H. Refer to case studies 1 to 7 for details." Ben moved closer, his military training making him focus on the important parts. "Case studies? That means other aliens have fought humans before." Lisa felt sick as she read further. The database contained reports from 3 different alien civilizations, all describing failed attempts to invade or control human space. Each report ended the same way. The alien forces had retreated or disappeared completely. "Amy, look for something called Project Prometheus," Lisa said, remembering a name that had appeared in several files. Amy searched and found a heavily encrypted file with that name. When she opened it, most of the information was missing or damaged, but what remained was terrifying. The file mentioned psychological warfare capabilities and unacceptable escalation patterns and combat effectiveness beyond projected parameters. Jake sat down heavily on a nearby rock. So aliens have been watching us for years, and they're all afraid to fight us? Why? Lisa studied the reports more carefully. One alien commander hidden, humans treat warfare as a form of problem-solving. Exercise. They show creativity and violence that exceeds all known species parameters. Recommend immediate withdrawal and permanent non-engagement protocols. Another report was even more disturbing. Human forces suffered 60% casualties, but continued fighting, with increased effectiveness. Their response to losses was to develop new tactics that inflicted 300% higher damage ratios. This species does not follow standard retreat protocols when facing superior numbers. Amy found more files, each one painting a picture of humanity that none of them recognized. According to the aliens, humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and completely unlike any other intelligent species they had encountered. There's something else, Amy said quietly. She had found a recent file, dated only 5 years ago. They're still watching us. This database gets updated regularly. Ben checked his weapon and looked around nervously. If they're still watching, they might know we're here right now. Lisa realized that everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe was wrong. They weren't alone, but they also weren't welcome. The galaxy was full of intelligent life, and all of it was afraid of humans. We need to get this information back to Earth, Lisa said. Command needs to know what we've found. As they prepared to download the alien database, Lisa wondered what it meant for humanity's future. Were they really as dangerous as the aliens claimed? And if so, what would happen when the rest of the galaxy decided that avoiding humans was no longer enough? The crystal continued to pulse with blue light, holding secrets that would change everything humans thought they knew about themselves and their place among the stars. 3 days after returning to Earth, Lisa found herself sitting in a room full of the most important people in the world. Admiral Frank Hayes, the head of Global Space Command, sat at the head of a long table with generals, scientists, and government officials. The alien database had caused panic at the highest levels of human leadership. Dr. Morgan, explain to us again what you found, Admiral Hayes said. He was an older man with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many wars. Lisa activated the holographic display she had prepared. The alien symbols appeared in the air above the table, translated into English. The crystal contained a galactic database with detailed records about every spacefaring civilization they've encountered. Humans are listed as a restricted species. Colonel Kate Williams, a sharp-faced woman who planned military operations, leaned forward. Restricted how? Are we quarantined? Not quarantined, Lisa said. Avoided. The database contains specific warnings telling all alien civilizations not to start fights with humans. Jake, who had been invited to the meeting as a technical expert, pulled up more files. The scary part is why they avoid us. It's not because we're more advanced than them. Amy, sitting next to Jake, looked nervous as she addressed the room full of powerful people. According to their records, 3 different alien groups tried to invade human space over the past 100 years. All 3 invasions failed, but not because we had better weapons. Admiral Hayes frowned. What do you mean? Lisa took a deep breath. The aliens seemed to think we're psychologically different from other intelligent species. They describe humans as having an unusual relationship with violence and warfare. She brought up one of the alien reports. This is from the Catherian Empire. Dated 2089. They tried to capture our mining colonies in the outer system. Listen to what their commander wrote. Human defenders continued fighting even when outnumbered 5 to 1. When their weapons failed, they used mining equipment as weapons. When their ships were damaged, they crashed them into our vessels while their crews were still alive. We lost more ships to suicide attacks than to conventional weapons. The room fell silent. General Marcus Webb, an old soldier, spoke first. "That sounds like normal military tactics when you're desperate." "That's what I thought too," Lisa said. "But look at this report from the Hegemony of Worlds, dated 2134. She switched to another file. They invaded 3 human colonies simultaneously. The human response was to immediately counterattack 6 hegemony worlds, including their home planet. The aliens withdrew from human space and offered peace terms within 2 weeks. Colonel Williams studied the reports carefully. They're saying we escalated the conflict beyond what they expected. More than that, Amy said, finding her courage. They're saying we escalated it beyond what they thought was rational. One report says humans appear to enjoy the intellectual challenge of warfare and treat combat as a competitive sport rather than a necessary evil. Ben Torres, who had also been brought to the meeting, nodded grimly. "I've seen soldiers who love the fight. But these aliens make it sound like all humans are like that." Lisa brought up the most disturbing report. This is from the Stellar Confederation, dated 2156. They tried to blockade Earth itself. The human response was something called Project Prometheus. Admiral Hayes went very still. "Project Prometheus was classified above your security level, Doctor. According to the alien records, Project Prometheus demonstrated to the watching galaxy exactly what humans are capable of when they're truly threatened," Lisa said. "The aliens won't say what happened, but after that demonstration, the Stellar Confederation not only ended their blockade, but also began warning other civilizations to avoid conflict with humans." Colonel Williams looked at Admiral Hayes. "Sir, what was Project Prometheus?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Project Prometheus was designed to show potential alien invaders that attacking Earth would cost more than they could afford to pay. The project demonstrated that humans could and would use any means necessary to defend themselves, including methods that other species would consider unthinkable." "What kind of methods?" General Webb asked. "The kind that ensure no alien civilization will ever try to conquer humanity again," Admiral Hayes said firmly. "The project was successful. We haven't been invaded since." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Admiral, the aliens describe humans as beautiful monsters. They say we're capable of great art, science, and compassion, but we're also capable of violence that goes beyond what any sane species would consider acceptable." Jake pulled up another file. "There's more. They've been studying our entertainment, our movies, books, and games. They're particularly disturbed by how much of our entertainment involves warfare and conflict." Amy found a section about human psychology. "They say most intelligent species develop either peaceful conflict resolution or they destroy themselves. Humans somehow developed both advanced technology and an enthusiasm for warfare that other species can't understand." The room was quiet as everyone processed this information. Finally, General Webb asked the question everyone was thinking. "Are they right? Are we really that different?" Colonel Williams answered first. "I've studied military history my whole career. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, and we keep getting better at it. Other species might see that as disturbing, but we also created art, literature, music, and science," Lisa protested. "We're not just warriors." "That might be what scares them," Ben said. "We're not mindless killers. We're intelligent beings who happen to be very, very good at warfare." Admiral Hayes stood up. "Regardless of whether the aliens are right about us, we now know that the galaxy is full of intelligent life, and all of it is afraid of humanity. The question is, what do we do with that information?" Lisa looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Maybe we should be asking ourselves why they're afraid. What is it about humans that makes entire civilizations choose to avoid us rather than risk a fight? Colonel Williams smiled grimly. Maybe it's because we're the only species that looks at a superior enemy force and asks, how do we win? Instead of, how do we surrender? The meeting continued for hours, but Lisa couldn't stop thinking about the alien reports. Were humans really as dangerous as the aliens claimed? And if they were, what did that mean for humanity's future among the stars? As she left the building, Lisa realized that the galaxy's fear of humanity might be the only thing keeping Earth safe. The question was whether that fear would last forever, or whether someday some alien civilization would decide that the risk of fighting humans was worth taking. That night, as she looked up at the stars, Lisa wondered if somewhere out there, alien commanders were looking back at Earth and planning for the day when they would test whether humanity's reputation was deserved. 6 months after the discovery on Kepler 442b, humanity's long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. A fleet of alien ships was approaching Earth, moving slowly and broadcasting peaceful intentions. After decades of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, first contact was finally happening. Secretary of State Robert Clark stood in the main conference room of the Global Space Command headquarters, watching the alien ships on the massive screen. They were beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and silver surfaces that reflected the light of distant stars. There were 12 ships in total, much larger than anything humans had ever built. They've been sending the same message for 3 days, Amy Carter reported from her communication station. She had been promoted after the alien database discovery and now led Earth's first contact communication team. They identify themselves as the Zephyrian Coalition and request permission to meet with Earth's leaders. Admiral Hayes studied this display showing the alien fleet. Dr. Morgan, what does our database tell us about these Zephyrians? Lisa pulled up the relevant files from the crystal they had found. The Zephyrians are described as a peaceful trading empire. They control about 40 star systems and are known for avoiding military conflicts. According to the records, they've never been involved in any wars. Colonel Williams, now in charge of Earth's defense preparations, looked skeptical. Peaceful. Traders don't usually travel in fleets of 12 warships. The database says they're explorers and diplomats, Lisa said. But you're right. This is a lot of ships for a peaceful mission. 3 days later, the alien ambassador arrived on Earth. Ambassador Veltar was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to see everything. He moved gracefully and spoke perfect English, though his voice had a musical quality that was unlike any human speech. "We greet the people of Earth," Veltar said, as he met with Secretary Clark and the human delegation. "The Zephyrian Coalition has watched your species develop with great interest. We believe it is time for formal contact." Secretary Clark, an experienced diplomat who had negotiated treaties around the world, welcomed the ambassador. "We're honored by your visit, Ambassador." Veltar, humanity has long hoped to meet other intelligent species. Dr. Morgan was part of the human team, chosen for her knowledge of the alien database. She watched Veltar carefully, noticing how his eyes seemed to study every human in the room. There was something calculating about the way he observed them. The first week of meetings went well. Veltar shared information about Zephyrian culture, their peaceful society, and their trading networks. He seemed genuinely interested in human art, literature, and science. But Lisa began to notice a pattern in his questions. "Tell me," Veltar said during one meeting, "how do humans resolve disputes over territory? If two groups both claimed the same land, what would happen?" Secretary Clark answered diplomatically, "We have legal systems and international courts to resolve such disputes peacefully. But what if those systems failed? Veltar pressed. What if one group refused to accept the court's decision? Colonel Williams, who was present as a military advisor, answered more directly. Then we'd use economic pressure, sanctions, and diplomatic isolation. If those failed and the situation threatened regional stability, military intervention might become necessary. Veltar made notes on a small device. And how many casualties would you consider acceptable in such an intervention? The question made everyone uncomfortable. Secretary Clark tried to deflect. We always seek to minimize casualties in any conflict. Of course, Veltar said smoothly. But surely you must plan for acceptable loss levels. What percentage of your military forces would you be willing to sacrifice to resolve such a territorial dispute? Lisa felt increasingly uneasy as the meetings continued. Veltar's questions always seemed to circle back to conflict, violence, and human responses to threats. He asked about historical wars, military strategies, and resource allocation during emergencies. During a break, Lisa approached Colonel Williams privately. Are you getting the same feeling I am about these questions? You mean that he's not here for peaceful trade discussions? Williams said grimly. Yeah, I noticed. He's conducting a psychological evaluation. Amy Carter joined them, looking worried. I've been monitoring their communications with their fleet. They're speaking in code, but I'm picking up phrases like behavioral assessment and threat evaluation. The testing became more obvious during the second week. Veltar presented the human delegation with a series of hypothetical scenarios, each one designed to provoke specific responses. Imagine, Veltar said, that a hostile alien force invaded one of your colonies and demanded complete surrender. The colonists numbered 50,000 people, including families and children. You have the military capability to fight, but your forces would be outnumbered 3-1. What would you do? Secretary Clark thought carefully before answering. We would attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution first. If that failed, we would evacuate as many civilians as possible while preparing a military response. Even though you would be outnumbered? Veltar asked. Numbers don't always determine the outcome of a conflict, Colonel Williams said. Superior tactics, better knowledge of the terrain, and higher motivation can overcome numerical disadvantages. Veltar's large eyes focused intently on Williams. Higher motivation? What do you mean? People fighting to defend their homes and families fight harder than invaders who are far from home, Williams explained. Also, we have a saying, the enemy gets a vote. Even if we can't win conventionally, we can make victory so expensive that the invaders decide it's not worth the cost. Lisa watched Veltar's reaction and saw something that looked like fear flicker across his alien features. The ambassador made more notes, his musical voice slightly strained. And what methods would you use to make victory expensive? Williams shrugged. Whatever works. Guerrilla warfare, sabotage, psychological operations, attacking supply lines, targeting command structures. The goal would be to make every day of occupation cost the invaders more than they could afford. That evening, Amy intercepted a transmission from Veltar to his fleet. Even though it was encrypted, she managed to decode part of it. Subjects display expected patterns. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 of evaluation. Prepare for possible immediate departure if threat assessment exceeds acceptable parameters. Next morning, Veltar arrived with a different attitude. He seemed nervous, almost frightened, as he presented the human delegation with a final scenario. Suppose, he said, his voice carefully controlled, that your entire species faced extinction from a superior alien force. Your technology was inferior, your numbers smaller, and defeat seemed certain. What would humanity do in such circumstances? The room fell silent. Lisa realized this wasn't just another hypothetical question. This was the real test. Veltar was asking what humans would do if faced with the ultimate threat. Secretary Clark looked at Colonel Williams, who nodded slightly. Then Clark gave the answer that would determine humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Ambassador Veltar, Clark said quietly, if humanity faced extinction, we would not go quietly into that dark night. We would fight with everything we had, use every resource available, and make our enemies pay such a terrible price that the survivors would remember us for 1,000 years. We would rather die free than live as slaves. Veltar stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. The coalition thanks you for your honesty. I must consult with my fleet immediately. As the ambassador hurried from the room, Lisa realized that humanity had just passed a test they didn't know they were taking. The question was whether they had passed or failed, and what the consequences would be for the rest of human history. 2 weeks after Ambassador Veltar's abrupt departure, the answer to humanity's test came in the worst possible way. The colony of New Denver, home to 200,000 humans on the edge of known space, went silent. When the rescue ships arrived, they found the colony under attack by unknown alien forces. Colonel Kate Williams stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the tactical display as her fleet approached New Denver. The attacking force was identified as a radical faction of Zephyrians, who had decided that humanity posed too great a threat to the galaxy to be allowed to continue existing. Commander Rivera, what's our status? Williams asked her pilot commander, Tony. Rivera, a skilled pilot who had trained for situations like this his entire career, checked his instruments. We've got 12 enemy ships surrounding the colony. They're using some kind of energy weapon to destroy the settlement's defenses. The colonists are fighting back with mining equipment and personal weapons. Lieutenant Helen Price, the tactical officer, studied the enemy formation. Colonel, their ships are more advanced than ours. Better shields, better weapons. In a straight fight, we're outmatched. Williams nodded grimly. She had read the alien database reports about human military tactics. Now she understood why other species found humanity so disturbing. We're not going to fight them straight, she said. Rivera, can you get us close to their formation? Close enough to ram if necessary, Rivera replied without hesitation. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Williams said, though she knew it might. Price, prepare the surprise packages. The battle began badly for the humans. The Zephyrian ships had better technology and outnumbered the human fleet 2-1. The Defiance took heavy damage in the first exchange of fire, losing half its weapon systems and most of its shields. But instead of retreating, Williams ordered her fleet to do something the aliens didn't expect. The human ships split up and attacked the enemy formation from 6 different directions at once, making it impossible for the Zephyrians to concentrate their fire. They're trying to surround us, the Zephyrian fleet commander reported to his ship's standard defensive formation. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. Instead of engaging in conventional ship-to-ship combat, the humans began using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare the aliens knew. Rivera piloted the badly damaged cruiser Houston directly at a Zephyrian battleship, broadcasting human war songs on all frequencies. At the last moment, he ejected in an escape pod while the Houston crashed into the enemy ship at full speed. Both vessels were destroyed, but the explosion damaged 2 other alien ships. Why did they sacrifice their ship? The Zephyrian commander asked in horror. They could have retreated and lived to fight another day. The answer came when Lieutenant Price, commanding the destroyer Phoenix, used the distraction to board a damaged Zephyrian vessel with a team of Marines. Within minutes, they had captured the ship's computers and were downloading alien technology. Impossible, the Zephyrian commander said. They're reverse engineering our weapon systems during The battle. Williams watched from the Defiance as her Marines, led by Sergeant Carl Johnson, began modifying human weapons with alien technology they had just stolen. Within an hour, the human ships were firing energy weapons that matched the Zephyrian capabilities. But the most terrifying moment came when the Colonial Defense Force joined the battle. The miners and settlers of New Denver had no military training, but they had something the aliens couldn't understand. They were angry. Mining supervisor Ellen Foster led a group of colonists in converted mining ships against the alien fleet. When their improvised weapons failed to penetrate the enemy shields, Foster ordered her ship to ram the Zephyrian command vessel. "This is for my daughter," Foster broadcast as her ship crashed into the alien flagship. The explosion crippled the enemy commander's ship and scattered the Zephyrian formation. Dr. Lisa Morgan, who was monitoring the battle from Earth, watched in horror as the colonists continued their desperate fight. "They're not just defending themselves," she reported to Admiral Hayes. "They're actively hunting the alien ships." The turning point came when Commander Rivera, who had survived the destruction of the Houston, was picked up by a colonial ship. Instead of being grateful for rescue, he immediately began planning a counterattack. "The aliens think they can attack our families and just leave," Rivera told the colonial captain. "Let's show them what happens when you threaten human children." Working together, the military and civilian forces began using tactics that no alien species had ever encountered. They used damaged ships as decoys, BROADCAST false surrender messages to lure enemies into traps, and coordinated attacks with mining equipment that the aliens didn't recognize as weapons. The most shocking moment came when young pilot Sarah Williams, the colonel's daughter who was stationed at New Denver, flew her damaged fighter directly into the alien fleet's ammunition storage. The resulting explosion destroyed 3 enemy ships and sent debris flying through space like deadly projectiles. "Command, this is Sarah Williams," she broadcast as her ship dove toward the enemy formation. "Tell my mom I love her, and tell the aliens that this is what happens when you mess with our home." The Zephyrian fleet commander, Admiral Zekvar, watched in growing terror as his technologically superior force was systematically destroyed by enemies who seemed to have no regard for their own safety. The humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. "They're not retreating even when facing certain death," he reported to his surviving ships. "They're using their own vessels as weapons. They're boarding our ships during combat. They're stealing our technology and using it against us within minutes of capturing it." When the smoke cleared, the human defenders had lost 6 ships and 400 lives. The Zephyrian attack force had lost 10 ships and been forced to retreat. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in what the aliens had witnessed. As the surviving Zephyrian ships fled toward deep space, Admiral Zekvar sent a desperate message to all coalition forces: immediate withdrawal from human space. Humans fight like no other species. They treat warfare as entertainment. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They modify tactics during battle. They steal enemy technology and use it immediately. They do not follow standard combat protocols. They escalate beyond all rational limits. The message concluded with words that would echo throughout the galaxy: "We attacked their children, and they made us pay a price we never imagined." These humans are not just dangerous. They are beautiful monsters who find joy in the art of war. No victory against them is worth the cost they will make you pay. Colonel Williams, standing in the ruins of New Denver's main settlement, looked up at the stars where the alien ships had fled. Around her, the colonists were already beginning to rebuild, singing work songs as they cleared debris and tended their wounded. "They're afraid of us," she said to herself, finally understanding what the alien database had been trying to tell them. They're not afraid of our technology or our numbers. They're afraid of who we are. As rescue ships arrived from Earth, Williams realized that the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The question was whether that was a good thing or a very dangerous thing for the future of the human race. 1 month after the Battle of New Denver, Ambassador Valtar returned to Earth. This time, he came alone in a small diplomatic ship, flying with visible signs of peaceful intent. His request for a meeting was urgent and came with an apology for the actions of the radical Zephian faction. Dr. Lisa Morgan sat across from the alien ambassador in the same conference room where their first meetings had taken place. The atmosphere was very different now. Secretary of State Robert Clark and Admiral Frank Hayes were present, but the real tension in the room came from Colonel Kate Williams, whose daughter had died in the battle defending New Denver. Ambassador Valtar, Admiral Hayes said formally, "You have our attention." The tall, pale blue alien looked tired and somehow smaller than before. His large eyes showed what humans might recognize as sadness or regret. "I come to explain why the radical faction attacked your colony, and more importantly, to help you understand what your species represents to the galaxy." Lisa leaned forward. "We've read your database. We know that alien civilizations avoid conflict with humans. What we don't understand is why." Valtar was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "Dr. Morgan, in all the history of spacefaring civilizations, every intelligent species faces the same challenge when they begin to compete for resources. They must choose between peaceful cooperation or violent conflict." Secretary Clark nodded. "That makes sense. Competition for limited resources drives conflict throughout the universe." "Yes," Valtar continued, "but here is what makes your species unique. Most civilizations face this choice and either learn to resolve disputes peacefully or they destroy themselves in wars that consume their entire species. Humans have done something different." Colonel Williams, her voice cold with controlled anger, asked, "What have we done that's so different?" "You have somehow managed to retain your capacity for extreme violence while also developing advanced technology and stable societies," Valtar explained. "Other species view this as impossible. We cannot comprehend how you can create beautiful art, groundbreaking science, and deep compassion while also perfecting the art of warfare." Admiral Hayes studied the alien ambassador. "Are you saying that other species gave up their ability to fight wars?" "Most species either evolve beyond the need for violence or they are destroyed by it," Valtar said. "Humans have kept both capabilities. You can negotiate peace treaties in the morning and plan military campaigns in the afternoon, often with the same individuals doing both tasks." Lisa began to understand. "So when other species look at humans, they see beautiful monsters." Valtar finished. "Beings capable of incredible creativity and kindness, but also capable of violence that goes beyond what any rational species would consider acceptable." He activated a small holographic device that showed images from the Battle of New Denver. "Look at what happened when the radical faction attacked your colony. Your defenders didn't just fight to survive. They fought with a creativity and enthusiasm that terrified our military observers." The images showed Colonial Supervisor Ellen Foster ramming her mining ship into the alien flagship while broadcasting messages of defiance. They showed Commander Tony Rivera sacrificing his ship to create an opening for other human vessels. They showed civilian miners working alongside military personnel to modify weapons with captured alien technology. Most species, when facing superior numbers and technology, would surrender or retreat, Valtar explained. Humans immediately began adapting enemy technology for their own use. Your people treated the battle like a puzzle to be solved, not a hopeless situation to be endured. Colonel Williams watched the images of her daughter's final moments. Sarah didn't have to crash her ship into their formation. She chose to do it. That is exactly what frightens the galaxy, Veltar said gently. Your daughter faced certain death and chose to use her life as a weapon. Not because she was ordered to, not because she had no choice, but because she decided it was the most effective way to hurt the enemy. Secretary Clark looked disturbed. You're saying we're too violent for the galaxy to accept? No, Veltar said, surprising everyone. I'm saying you're too effective at violence for anyone to want to fight you. The restriction on harming humans isn't based on fear of retaliation. It's based on the understanding that any conflict with humanity will escalate beyond what any sane civilization would consider acceptable. He showed them more images from the alien database. Every species that has fought humans has learned the same lesson. You don't just fight wars. You perfect the art of warfare. You treat each conflict as an opportunity to test new theories about combat effectiveness. Lisa felt a chill as she realized the truth. We enjoy it. Not the death and destruction, but the challenge of it. The problem-solving aspect. Exactly, Veltar said. Most species fight wars because they have to. Humans fight wars because you're good at it, and because some part of you finds the intellectual challenge stimulating. Admiral Hayes leaned back in his chair. So the galaxy avoids us because we're unpredictable in combat? Because you're innovative in combat, Veltar corrected. Other species follow established patterns of warfare. Humans constantly develop new tactics, new strategies, new ways to use existing resources. Your military histories show thousands of years of continuously evolving combat techniques. Colonel Williams finally spoke, her voice still tight with grief. What about the radical faction that attacked New Denver? Why did they think they could win? Veltar looked down at his hands. They believed that humans were simply more aggressive than other species. They thought that superior technology would be enough to defeat you. They didn't understand that aggression was only a small part of what makes humans dangerous. What makes us dangerous? Lisa asked. Your ability to find joy and creativity in the most terrible circumstances, Veltar said. During the battle, your colonial defenders were singing work songs while they modified mining equipment into weapons. Your military personnel were making jokes over the radio while planning suicide attacks. You treat warfare like a competitive sport rather than a necessary evil. The room was quiet for several minutes as the humans processed this information. Finally, Admiral Hayes asked the crucial question. What does this mean for humanity's future in the galaxy? Veltar smiled. The first time any of them had seen the alien express what looked like genuine happiness. It means you will be welcomed across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as the one species everyone desperately wants to keep happy, well-fed, and entertained with peaceful pursuits. Secretary Clark looked confused. I don't understand. The galaxy has learned that the best way to deal with humans is to make sure you never have a reason to fight, Veltar explained. Every civilization now understands that keeping humans content and engaged in peaceful activities is much safer than risking a conflict. Lisa began to laugh, though there was little humor in it. So we've become the galaxy's unofficial peacekeepers. Not because we're the most peaceful species, but because everyone else is too afraid to start wars when humans might get involved. Precisely, Veltar said. When two alien civilizations have a dispute now, the first question they ask is, what would the humans do if they found out about this conflict? The answer is usually enough to encourage peaceful negotiation. Admiral Hayes shook his head in amazement. We're not even trying to police the galaxy, and our reputation is keeping the peace. Your reputation for finding creative solutions to impossible problems, Veltar clarified. Other species have learned that humans approach every challenge with the same attitude. You look for ways to win, even when victory seems impossible. Colonel Williams studied the alien ambassador. What about species that decide the risk is worth taking? What about civilizations that think they can handle whatever humans throw at them? Veltar's expression became serious again. The database is updated regularly with new information about human capabilities. After the Battle of New Denver, several civilizations that had been considering expansion into human space immediately changed their plans. Why? Lisa asked. Because your colonists and military worked together so effectively that our observers couldn't tell which group was more dangerous, Veltar said. Civilian miners were coordinating with trained soldiers to modify alien technology during active combat. Your daughter, he said to Colonel Williams, made tactical decisions that impressed even our most experienced military analysts. He paused, then continued. But what truly disturbed the galaxy was the aftermath. Within hours of the battle ending, your colonists were already rebuilding and singing while they worked. You had just fought a battle that should have traumatized your entire population, but instead, your people were treating it like they had overcome a difficult but interesting challenge. Secretary Clark finally understood. We're not just good at fighting. We're good at recovering from fights and learning from them. And that, Veltar said, is what makes humans truly unique in the galaxy. Most species that survive major conflicts are changed by them, often permanently damaged. Humans seem to grow stronger and more capable after each challenge. Lisa thought about everything they had learned since finding the alien database. So our role in the galaxy is to be the species that everyone wants to avoid fighting, which keeps EV